Lighthouse. And what we have here is a small attempt by like-minded individuals to connect to the larger Indian audience and the world audience in general about the strategic culture in India, as well as the ideology behind the whole nation of India. We'll get through to that part later. So we'll be having a lot of guests coming here, talking about their viewpoints and how they see current day affairs. And we will also be discussing and opinionating on major issues that we see happening see everywhere around the world as and when it comes. Today, I would like to invite and also introduce you to Yusuf. He is what do you call the moderator, owner, all in all of Defense Forum India, as well as he's a speaker, a Twitterati, and he's also right now going up the ladder of what you call the movers and shakers of the strategic thought in India. So, Yusuf, welcome to the Indic Lighthouse. And may I, ladies and gentlemen, may I also say he's the co-founder of the Indic Lighthouse. I failed to mention that. So let me put that also to you. Over to you, Yusuf.
Hi, others. Thanks for starting this. This initiative is completely yours. I'm obviously going to play my part in it. We'll also have other friends from the Defense Forum chip in once we have moved on from this starting point that we have just initiated right now. This is it. We've been talking about this for a long time. Let's get going with this.
Yep. I think one of the topics that I want to discuss today, Yusuf, is something the Indian population knows. I think one of the most toughest part of being a patriotic Indian, as well as being a concerned Indian, is that the whole population right now, most of the population, they're all patriotic. They're all, they're all for the cause of India. But a lot of them are completely ill-informed and therefore cannot influence what is happening daily with the government, as well as with other opinion makers. So this is our small step towards that, where we are actually going to, talk about important issues which ordinary laymen, ordinary citizens of India could actually listen and understand. We will show no bias here. The whole idea is to actually promote the ideology of India, promote the idea of India. So one such event happened yesterday, day before yesterday to be exact, the Agni 5. Now, I would like to talk to you and I would like to hear your views on how Agni 5 completely changed the landscape, with the strategic landscape in India. Do you want me to explain to the larger audience on what the Agni 5 is, or should I directly go into the strategic thought?
How do you want? I think it will make sense that the larger audience know what the Agni 5 is all about. I mean, I'm on Twitter and I get all these questions asked to me, basic questions, and it's good that we are doing this today. Also, my whole experience on Twitter, or what I do on Twitter, is just basically share what I learn. So that's what I use my Twitter handle for. So yes, the Agni 5 missile is obviously a huge leap for India as far as strategic deterrence, as we call it, deterrence as it goes. So for a long time, we had only the Prithvi missile and then the Agni 1, which is only 700 kilometers in range. And then we came up with the Agni 2, 3, and 4. But these missiles were not capable of providing the kind of security we needed vis-a-vis China, where we can have a missile, say, somewhere in the Western Ghats, in some tunnel in the Western Ghat, which is able to target, say, Beijing or Shanghai. With the Agni 5, which the government says is a over 5,000 kilometer range missile, and that over can mean anything. Well, I have my own estimate, or not a obviously with kind of data which I can take from the government, but just from the initial test, the very first test that was conducted, and the kind of the coordinates of the splashdown where it was given, just use that, just makes you think that obviously this missile is not a 5,000 kilometer range missile. It's way over that.
Definitely. Definitely it isn't. And I think it was during the first initial test firing of the Agni 5 that where the Chinese, one of the Chinese commentators, it's still there on YouTube. It was during, it was, he spoke about it along with the Chinese TV channel interview with regards to Agni 5. And where he said, this is a weapon which carries 1.5 ton warhead. You don't require 1.5 ton of warhead, okay? And it has such a huge solid boosters, right? And the materials will definitely, as time progresses, will get lighter, and you'll get better, what do you call, boosters also. So here he
Also
was
the
telling
propulsion technology,
propulsion technology.
the kind of propellants that we use.
Exactly.
5 is a 50-ton, 50,000-ton missile.
It's
Sorry, 50
it's a
ton,
50 it's a 50
50,000 kg.
ton
Sorry, 50 ton. Yeah. So
ton.
it's a 50-ton missile, and it has to be a very bad missile. When I say bad missile, I'm talking about first generation kind of a missile to have a 50-ton missile,
Definitely.
which goes just 5,000 kilometers.
I think
Uh,
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the game play of the Indian government comes out the moment they say it's 1.5 ton warhead carrying capacity, because our warheads are much lighter.
yeah.
Our
So
warheads come
so
around 500 kilos.
that gives away that we are looking at multiple independently retargetable vehicles. So we are looking at MIRVs as they are
Mills.
called,
Yeah.
and yes, we can probably carry say 3 to 6 MIRVs on each Agni 5. Obviously, right now, nothing much has been disclosed about it. We probably want to make sure that we have
Absolutely.
a long distance or an ICBM in place. 4 tests, all tests have proven a success. The last 2 were from canister, and that itself makes a huge difference for us. A canister launched missile allows us to have a missile ready to go at a very short notice. So that itself will mean that we're going to change the way a posture is, where our standard operating procedures, everything changes, because to have a canister launch missile, it'll mean that we'll have the nuclear warheads mated with the missile, and it'll be all over the place because it's a road mobile missile. It'll be anywhere in India, in some tunnel or in
Absolutely.
some place, and it will obviously have some kind of obviously require a whole command, control, and communication system in place, where if we are attacked and we have to strike back, and all it needs is some authentication. Obviously, you can't have the missile in control of a few soldiers over there who are ready, who can just fire it. It requires
Look,
political
there is a
authorization. So without that, it's not going to happen. So, but because it is canister launched, it allows India a much better survivability. It will be anywhere in the country, very more difficult to detect by spy satellites, especially because it's just get into any of the mountain caves. I mean, entire tunnel systems can be created for this.
I mean, if you actually look at the Russian example of actually carrying missiles over train systems, railway lines. So you had Russian military, what do you call, trains running with missiles all over, and we have one of the largest train. We have the largest train network in the world. That's what I'm, and it's one of the most confusing train networks in the world. So it's definitely, excuse me. So sorry. So it's not going to be easy for the spy satellites and everyone, and even the intelligence agencies to actually pinpoint, even if we actually have a, what do you call, a road mobile, a rail line mobile, and even a silo-based, what do you call,
So all our missiles so
Agni
far
5.
have been rail mobile. So so far we've had rail mobiles, but then you also have
No,
to see that the rail lines, when you call it as an example, or on an advantage rather, of having a missile on railway and crisscrossing all over the country, and especially because everything is so crowded and be difficult for people to spot it. But then you look at the other way, in a time of an emergency, the whole clogged rail network can actually turn out to be a very big disadvantage. So road mobile missile actually is much better, especially because it can be hidden anywhere. I mean, uh, I remember reading on some of the other forums, on the Western forums, and how the U.S. tracked the Russian. It's so difficult for them to track the Russian or Soviet road mobile missiles, where the Soviets made roads all over the country, and they actually call it the roads that go to nowhere. The road that lead to nowhere.
they've had tremendous, Yusuf, they've had tremendous successes also. One of the ways that Americans used to actually, what do you call, find Russian missiles was to actually look in the Russian hinterland, look for roads which went nowhere.
Yeah.
Yep. The roads which go nowhere.
Exactly.
And that is used because one of the most important things for a missile launcher is to have space so that it can launch and to be out of people's everyday
so
life.
the funny part is over here, the Americans used to look for garbage on these roads that lead to nowhere. Look for the garbage, because you have 1,000 people or 500 people with a whole bunch of nukes. You obviously have a lot of people, and they're going to generate a lot of garbage, and that's what the US track. But that anyway, India is a much smaller country. Also, again, very crowded. Our roads are also crowded, but we'll have to take advantage of the geography.
There is
the mountains.
there's one of the biggest problem. One of the biggest problem. It's a TEL. Canisterized, what do you call, missiles are carried by huge TELs, and these huge TELs in most of the roads in India they cannot operate through. Only on the highways can they operate through. Now these are serious things, but I'm sure.
But obviously,
you don't
expect an Agni 5 TL to say cross Bombay, or Delhi or something. Obviously, they'll be dispersed somewhere where it'll be hidden.
Somewhere. Yeah, I'm sure the government has a good idea of how to actually go about it. But moving on from this. I think we need a little more research onto how. I mean, we have our own infrastructure difficulties. If you have a crowded rail system, we have a what do you call small 90% of Indian roads are under 15 meters wide. Now these are serious issues. So that means yet the other what do you call 10% is a huge number in itself. But I'm sure we will have a lot of what do you call we will have our options for sure.
Yeah.
Now moving on to that, moving on from that, let's speak about how the Chinese are looking at this and why there is an absolute silence from the Western world.
The Chinese have
the
reacted.
Australians.
The Chinese have reacted this time in a much more critical manner, where they have actually cited a UN resolution. When I checked the UN resolution, it was passed in 1998 after we conducted the nuclear test, they condemned both India and Pakistan for conducting the test. It is a non-binding resolution under what Article 6 it is called, where it is the resolution is not binding. And it was the same old thing where they asked to not conduct further tests, not to conduct missile tests, and not to weaponize the warheads and stuff like that. So anyway, that was a long time ago, and since then in 2005 we have an implicit recognition of our nuclear power status with the 2005 nuclear deal with the United States, and subsequently passed by a lot of other countries. And very recently we joined the MTCR, the Missile Technology Control Regime, which we tried for a long time. It was
which was created just to keep us out.
Yes, I mean the biggest one that was created to keep us out was a nuclear suppliers group, so that they could restrict all the technology that. And now we are trying to get into the NSG, and the only one holding out right now is China. So obviously now they are looking at India as a very serious security competitor. If you also see that they have vetoed or not allowed the UN Security Council to act against Masood Azhar, where they have kept a technical hold. I mean, obviously, it's just a It's a false kind of. They don't want us to be a security competitor. They are really very concerned about our cooperation with the United States and Japan, especially now. And they've commented just the other day, I think about 2 or 3 days ago, where they again hit out against the Malabar exercise, where they said that
No,
they
they.
are this is
I
this is
think.
this is only to counter China.
Yeah, but Yusuf, coming on to that, I mean, it is an extremely funny coming from the Chinese, who have actually given nukes to our competitors, that is Pakistan, our enemy, that is Pakistan. They have tried every bit to make sure that there is no strategic space for us, right? And here we have the Chinese talking about their strategic space being muffled or being shrunk rather by the Indians and the Americans and the Japanese all coming together. I find it extremely funny for them to say it. But
So,
how do
it,
you think? This is my question. Like, how do you think the Chinese? Because right now you're the Agni 1, Agni 2, and Agni 3, which are inducted. Agni 4 and Agni 5 is not inducted. These are the last. After this, I suppose it is going to be user test, user
I think the
trials after
user
this.
trials of Agni 4 have already started. So, yeah.
And it's coming. It's coming in January. It's
And
coming in
and
January.
the
The
thing
first
is, the
step,
Agni, the range of Agni 3 itself is a suspect, where we say it's a 3,000 or 3,500
absolutely.
kilometer range missile, but it's actually
Do
a
you
bit
know?
more.
Do you know what is the how much what's the warhead weight of Agni 3?
Two
This is
tons.
going to really 3.
So you're looking over 10 MIRVs.
I have no clue. What are we planning to do with it?
No,
So like
so
I was
obviously it cannot be a 3,000 kilometer range missile if you're going to carry a two, because we don't need such a big warhead. I mean, our warheads are much lighter. The 250 kiloton warhead that we're talking about probably weighs about 300 kgs or 400 kgs, not more than that.
yeah. No, I mean you have if I'm not mistaken, it's a WS-13, which is the American 200 kiloton warhead. It's a WS-13 and
W87,
WS-13
that's the standard missile on all.
W87.
W87
Yeah,
is a standard
yeah,
missile on all.
W87. W87.
WS13 is the Chinese engine.
No, 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 no. I must have got it wrong.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
The
so
W87
thanks
is
for
a
correcting
standard
me.
on
It's
on the Trident missiles. We have the
W87,
W87.
W87, and I think they're going to do they're going to what do you call after Trump has come into power, you can expect a new version of it coming along for sure. And that W87 is it?
87.
W87.
Yeah.
W87 weighs around 280 kilograms,
Yeah.
right? I'm
Yes.
sure Indian warheads, here we are being very mean to our own people, might not be as light as that. We might be, what do you call, possibly because of America is a much more technologically advanced country, therefore we might be on a little more heavier side, but I'm sure it won't be much more than 400 kilos for sure.
Yeah. I think there is a kind of a weight estimate was there. I think it's about 300, 350 kgs. It's not more than that. And also the yield is about 200, 250 kilotons. The W87 has a
250.
yield of 350 kilotons. And I think when you talked about the modernization, the US is already on to its largest ever nuclear modernization program. And
So are the
it
Russians.
was initiated by the Nobel Prize winner, Barack Obama, President Barack Obama. And it's over the next 30 years, the program will probably cost about $1 trillion over the next 30 years, where the entire, looking at the nuclear weapons, the designs, making newer ones. Obviously, they're not going to test, but they have advanced simulation technologies. They have enough data conducted over the thousands of tests that they have done to simulate the kind of designs that they would want. And also they're modernizing the bomber fleets. They are going to modernize the ICBMs, the nuclear ballistic missile submarines, everything. So $1 trillion over it. Obviously, Russians are also up there in competition
Mhm.
with the US.
They have come. The Putin has actually announced, I think around last week, that they are also going in for a huge nuclear forces modernization. The
Except that they
Chinese
don't have the kind of
are
money that the US have.
definitely, Definitely. I mean, US is in a different league of its own. So are the Chinese close by to them. So the question arises after that for us: how are the Chinese going to behave after these missiles get inducted?
They've already reacted.
Is there going?
They've already
No,
reacted. I
I'm
mean,
not talking.
they
I'm not
have.
talking. I am.
No, I'm talking in terms of them, of their nuclear posture. They have missiles stationed in Tibet.
No, no,
They
Yusuf.
have
This is
DF-21 missiles stationed in Tibet, pointing at India,
Yusuf.
obviously.
Yusuf, listen to the question. That wasn't my question. So now our missiles are going to be inducted. Here, for the past 5, 6 years, we have seen the Chinese push us quite literally in many strategic areas because there was, from their perspective, there wasn't much they could have done to them. Now, with the Agni 5 coming in, how do you think their strategic actions in our area will change?
They have been acting for a long time. I mean, we can't discount the fact that they gave nuclear weapons to the Pakistanis. They gave them the missile technology. So it's India which is
Yeah.
just making sure
No,
it is
I don't
secure.
think you didn't get what I'm trying to say. See, I have a small belief that the Chinese behavior towards India, which is about we don't care, you're not big enough for us, kind of a behavior to us till now. I think there is going to be a marked change over there, where you'll have the Chinese behaving a little more respectfully to India, and the Chinese will start listening a little bit to India and will be more careful not to antagonize India. I have a belief that it might be because this is for the
No,
first time. The moment Agni,
the indications have been to the contrary, Adarsh. If you look at the entire Chinese behavior overall in the
uh,
entire region in the last few years, where they have declared an air defense identification zone over a Japanese island, which it claims, then the whole reclamation in South China
they
Sea.
made their own island, a new island
Yeah,
in the South China Sea.
and they've already installed missiles, air defense missiles over there. They have a runway where the fighter jets can take off. They have underground facilities, everything. They have militarized the entire island. So you have to look at it in entire perspective. It's not that they are
No,
going to give us any more respect. They're getting more aggressive and more belligerent.
they are, but at the same time, when I have a feeling there is going to be a difference in the attitude with the Chinese. The Chinese are a people, they're a race who, what do you call, saving face matters to them. The Japanese issue and the South China issue, I feel, is an extremely different issue. Here, we are a direct, what do you call, nuclear power. The Japanese aren't, the Malaysians aren't, the Singaporeans aren't, the Indonesians aren't, the Philippines, they aren't. It's only the American intervention on the behalf of them creates that issue. On the other hand, with us, we are in direct conflict. So
Yeah.
there could be, I mean, all we could do is that we could just wait and see how this is going to change. Or maybe there won't be any change, and maybe they would behave with us as they have behaved all throughout, what do you call, the last 20, 30 years. Now, the question again comes the infrastructure development that is actually needed for Agni 5. How long would it take for India to reach a level where getting the Agni 5 to anywhere in India as we please would be an easy proposition?
Difficult, because India is a much smaller country than, say, the Russians or even the Chinese,
The
who have
Chinese.
large tracts of land. You know, you know, just to
Huge, big,
go about
wide roads.
anywhere. So where do we get the kind of space? So it's going to be a challenge, but probably we will see a bit of road network and a lot of tunneling. I'm sure the tunnels are already in place. We have a number of mountain ranges. We have the Western Ghats, the Eastern Ghats, even in the Northeast. So I'm sure that is what we're
But
looking. But
no,
provides.
but the
But the
problem
thing is with
is,
the tunnels or tunnels under mountains that provides
uh,
security against the Chinese first strike.
the problem is you have to, in the first place, get the missile to the Western Ghats, let's say, which I know that part of the world quite well. To getting a missile to the Western Ghats is going to be one of the most difficult propositions ever, because except for few areas, the rest of the roads are simply not wide enough. Our national highway, one of the major national highways connecting, let's say, so let's talk about Kerala, which is one of the last portions of land in the whole in the Indian subcontinent. The the highway which connects Mangalore all the way to Trivandrum, 90%, and I'm kid you not, I even have some, what do you call, land in one of these highways, is 17 meters wide. It's a single lane highway. Now, I cannot imagine a nuclear missile TEL being transported through, what do you call, in the middle of this national highway. I simply don't see it. So, but I'm sure we don't face any, what do you call, extreme nuclear threat in the foreseeable future for sure. But infrastructure development, the civilian infrastructure development is an extremely important part of our nuclear safety, I feel,
It
which
is,
a lot
and
of people don't talk about.
no, it is, and if you notice that we are trying to use the civilian infrastructure, we're trying to upgrade it. We twice now we have landed our fighter jets on highways, so we're looking in that direction. Obviously, uh, things move a little bit slowly in India, but I'm sure the infrastructure will be in place, and also if you look at the border development, the road development in the northeast and other areas where right now we need those areas to be well connected, because that's the closest to China. So if you want to launch an Agni 3, if it's a 3,000 kilometer range missile, it has to be somewhere close to the northern part of India, and we are making the road infrastructure over there as well as the rail infrastructure.
I
So
mean,
yes,
this
I'm
is
sure we'll get there in the future. Maybe a little slow in
no,
development, obviously, and not
but I
a
think
lot of this will not come out in the open as well as to where we're making it. Because if
absolutely,
Indian government is
absolutely.
making, if the Indian government is making roads that lead to nowhere, obviously you and I are not going to know about it.
No, but as a layman, as an ordinary citizen of India, I mean, the people who are watching, I'm sure it is in their interest, it's in the national interest to actually let road infrastructure be one of the most top priorities in India.
It is. It has been for the last decade, over a decade since we got
Yeah,
the golden
but
quadrilateral
they
project
haven't.
going.
Those are all, for example, the road that I spoke to you about, NH17, National Highway 17, has been involved, has been on the cards from 2003, and nothing has happened. They have not even built one stretch, 1 kilometer of that widened road. Now, these are very serious issues, and the central government gives the funds, it gets lapsed, people don't give land, the state government have their own
So
issues.
yeah,
There are
so
multiple
probably
issues.
the issue may be with the state government. So
No,
um, because I have seen the
no,
roads
I
that go
don't want to
from here
get, I
all
don't
the
want to
way
get
to
in, I don't want to
because
get into, I don't want to get into, where whose fault it is. I mean, it's not the topic here, but one of the problems the viewers and people should know, how, and who people who are actually more bothered about defense, is that there are people that I know who says, yes, we should support our army, we need to have a robust defense system, and then the same people would say, I'm not giving my land for a road.
yeah.
People should know that it is an
So
extremely
so
calculated.
that will come only if more and more people uh, are made aware of what the requirements are. Obviously, the other thing is the lack of trust in the government, right? And nobody wants to
Absolutely.
part with their own land. So, yeah, these are the issues which we'll have to counter along the way. It's not only for defense sector; it's even for the civil sector. I mean, we saw what happened in West Bengal with the Tata Nano project.
Yeah,
These are,
absolutely.
but we are a democratic country, and we'll have to take all that in our
We'll
stride.
have to tackle that. But one of the most important part, see, democracy works when you have an informed population. And
Exactly.
what
So
we are trying here to do is to inform the population.
exactly.
That is what we are doing. That's what we are doing. So let's sticking on to the same subject. Do you see what do you call the K series, which is an offshoot of the Agni series? I've heard, but these are the submarine launched ballistic missile systems. The K 15 K, it is said, stands for Kalam 15, and Kalam 15 has a range of 750 kilometers. From what I understand, these have been already test fired from Putons. I think that's what it's called,
Pontoons.
and the K4, which is 3,500 kilometers long, has already been test fired also, like once. Now, I'm sure we would require larger ranges for the submarine launched missiles. Can you explain why we would require land-based missile system when we have a submarine-based missile system?
We're very clear about this. We are looking at a triad of for our nuclear forces, because we are a power which has said that we are not going to use nuclear missiles first. So we have to make sure that we have survivable nukes. So if we were to come under attack first, and say maybe one of our submarines is taken out and some of our land missiles are taken, there has to be something which the enemy should know that we hold some more of it, and we will launch all of it at
Redundancy.
you. So it is all about having multiple options available to deter the enemy from using their weapons of mass destruction on us. So we are very clear about this. Our nuclear doctrine is very clear about it. We want to operate a triad, and the triad will be soon completed when the Ariane goes on deterrent, what is called a deterrent patrol, where it will have missiles along with nuclear warheads on it.
There is a complete ambiguity when it comes with regards to nuclear command and control. If you take if you take the Americans and the Russians, they're very clear about their chain of command. I mean, so clear that they've actually made that into movies, right? Uh, and here we are absolutely unaware how the command works, and it is now that may not be a very classified huge secret. This is something that the population should know, that these are the barriers which have been kept for nuclear launch. And so, do you think before the annual of the first Arihant deterrent patrol that you could actually see the Indian government coming out and what do you call clearing the doubts of many with regards to the Indian nuclear command structure?
I remember reading this somewhere. I don't exactly recall where, but or who, but there is an army general, I think, who said that even if Delhi is wiped out, don't worry, the chain of command is in place where someone will launch the nukes that we have in retaliation. So yes, it's not in public domain, but obviously the entire chain of command is in place.
But don't you think it is quite necessary for the Indian population to know what is the chain of command?
I, I would agree, but then the whole Indian concept has been built into with ambiguity. I would, I am someone who is for transparency, where I would say transparent in terms of what constitutes a minimum nuclear deterrent, uh, and this helps
Absolutely.
in more ways than one. Not only does it inform our own people, it'll inform the enemy as well, as this is the number that we're looking at, and this is what we have. The US is very transparent about its numbers. I mean, it's known what the Russians and the United States have, as well as UK
the
and
Chinese
France.
the Chinese are not very clear about it, but
The Chinese are not clear
you're
about it.
absolutely
But
absolutely right.
the whole question of a stable nuclear regime, where there is there is no scope for any accidental launch. Everything happened because these big countries talked to each other. They came up with a verifiable mechanism. We had the START 1, START
Absolutely.
2 treaty, SALT, and stuff like that. So, uh,
Uh, the
so
salt is a different treaty altogether, where they're actually reducing the number of nuclear weapons. Uh, but this is actually something we would expect the Indian government to actually come up with, to spell out its nuclear command frame policy, and nuclear launch policy, and nuclear command policy. And I think Parikar, I would call him a defense minister who has been here and there, to be very honest with you. Uh, he spoke about no first use policy, that which we are a declared no first use country. But at the same time, it does put us at quite a bit of disadvantage here and there. Therefore, do you think, and America is not a no first use country, nor is nor are the Russians. It's only the Chinese and what do you call Indians mostly who are a no first use country. Do we really have to be a no first use country?
it has its pros and cons. I mean, when you're a no first use country, the other side knows. I mean, the Chinese know we are not going to attack first. Now, once you change the policy to a first use policy, obviously they will look at India in a different manner. Having said that, we have had a nuclear doctrine which was declared in 2004, and ever since that we have not revisited. Although the nuclear doctrine itself mentions that regular updation or regular you would want to call it, you need to revisit the the nuclear doctrine every 5 years or maybe 10 years. So the BJP in its manifesto, election manifesto, had talked about this, but we have not heard of anything since then, except Mr. Parikar, who just kind of mentioned that he would prefer a first use policy rather than a no first use policy, and this is
Yeah.
something which should
Yeah,
be deliberated. in
I,
fact in
I,
fact in 2010 or 11, we had the national security advisor of the time who said that our no first use is against non-nuclear weapons states, and that itself changes the whole thing. So uh, like I said, I would prefer more transparency. First of all, that itself will put a comfort level with the enemy, and I would say quote unquote comfort level, because the enemy knows that you're being transparent about what you have, and the enemy knows as well as what is going to hit them if they act crazy.
I mean, there have been three or four times in history where Russia and America would have actually wiped the earth clean by accidental launches. And once it was very, very clear. It was a simple computer glitch, which happened in 1970s, early 70s, if I'm not wrong. Now, so yes, if you're clear about what is our deterrence and what is, um, and there is an important question which we did not discuss. I'm jumping from here because I just remembered that, and I wanted to speak to you on this. What do you think the Agni 5 is? Do you think it's a counter value weapon, or do you think it's a counter force weapon?
Counter value, definitely counter
You
value.
think it's a counter weapon?
We're looking at Beijing and Shanghai. It's as simple as that, from anywhere in India.
But can I give you another perspective on it?
Hmm.
The CEP, the circular error probability of the Agni series, is less than 10 meters.
Yes, so that allows us to use smaller warheads, right? We don't need large warheads,
No,
and
but
that's where you get into the picture. Get
but
into the
that
picture
also
the
that also
1.5 tons of payload, and why do you need a 1.5
no,
ton
you didn't
payload?
understand my question, Yusuf. The moment you have what do you call very precise targeting, the moment you have that capability on a ballistic missile, nuclear ballistic missile, it also allows us, if we are, in case, if we were able to find, let's say, uh, the second artillery of the Chinese, who we know are the nuclear weapons launchers. And we know that they're the ones who have the nuclear weapons. And we were able to find them, let's say, in the Tibetan plateau. And here, we can use the Agni series as a counter force weapon. This is something I haven't understood. I'm trying to figure out. I mean, it makes more sense because the lesser number of nuclear weapons you have, the more chances of you being a counter value weapon, a counter value state. But the the moment I look into the CEP, it moreover looks like a counter force weapon, which is usually what do you call carried by the larger nuclear arsenal states like Russia and the
No,
USA.
I will disagree there.
Uh-huh.
The reduction of the CEP only allows us to have smaller warheads, right? And cause a lot of damage. Now, if you're say if you're able to target the sewer system in Beijing and Shanghai with even a 20 kiloton warhead, a lot of people are going to die from the diseases that follow after that. So your precise targeting, your accuracy allows you to target very specific areas, and then also reduces the size of the warhead required.
Which is
Going into counter
counter
force,
force weapon is.
no, the counter force will start an arms race. Um, we are not there,
So,
and also counter
so can you
force.
tell me? Can you tell me then what is a counter force weapon?
A counter force weapon. I mean, the only two countries which indulged in this were the Russians and the Americans, and they soon
So,
realized that this is
what is a counter force weapon? What would constitute a counter force weapon?
so. A counter force weapon is that you're going to take out the enemy forces. It's nuclear weapons, it's command and control centers, basically wipe out
Yeah.
its fighting capability. When you talk about deterrence, where we talk about minimum credible
No. So.
deterrence, we are just looking to
Mhm.
deter a nuclear attack on
No,
us.
I know that is what we are saying. I know that is what the government is saying, and that looks like our intention also. But one of the most important aspects of a counterforce weapon, a ballistic counterforce weapon, is precise targeting, right? And to
It
have
wasn't
a
the case
highly
earlier. It wasn't the case earlier. If the earlier missiles, say in the 60s and 70s, they had a very large CEPs, as it's called, and that's the reason why the Soviets and the Americans developed these large megaton warheads, because the missiles were not accurate. So,
that
uh,
is, yeah, absolutely, that is from another perspective. I'm telling you from a counterforce. I'm asking you rather from a very counterforce perspective, where precise targeting is what matters. Intelligence matters. Precise targeting matters.
but
So
I'll again come
it
back
is
to it
something
that
that has been. It
I'll
has been
again come
something that
back
has
to
been.
I'll come back to the doctrine itself, which says minimum credible deterrent, and we are a deterrent
Mhm.
force. So basically, we want to deter the enemy from launching nukes at us. We're not going to get into counter force because we'll require a lot of weapons.
No,
I
no,
mean,
I
you
know.
understand that if you want to take out,
I know that. I know that quite well. But my question is, why the insistence by what do you call the spokesman, the Indian government spokesman, as well as the DRDO, to throw out the CEP number every time? The moment we actually talk about CEP numbers, it also has another what do you call it sends a signal, right? We are able to
it sends
precisely target you.
it sends a signal that we have a very advanced program, right? And like I said, even if you want to target Beijing and Shanghai, you need precise, very accurate missiles. I mean, you compare this with what happens with the Pakistani or the North Korean missiles, which we are aware, of course. I mean, you require advanced navigation technologies to get these missiles to go where they're supposed to go. So I would not read the CEP, the very the accuracy of the Agni missiles into and judge it to be a counter force for application. I wouldn't say that, because it'll
It's
basically
something that
require a
is
lot of It'll just require huge numbers. I mean, once you get into the whole counter
we
force
don't have no
thing, then you're
that
looking
is
at a
that is
huge amount of numbers, and you're getting into a massive
you,
arms race. So no.
you're absolutely right on that part. I mean, we simply don't have the uranium for more number of nuclear warheads. You know,
We
so
have a
we
lot of
don't have a.
fissile materials. We do have a lot of fissile materials. It's just that we don't choose to weaponize it. I mean, if you have read reports of David Albright, um,
Hmm.
the amount of fissile material we have, we can probably produce 1,000 bombs or maybe 2,000 bombs. but we choose not to. We go by
No,
the minimum deterrent.
but that's been just one estimate. There have been other estimates which says otherwise. And it was one of the major, what do you call, driving point towards a nuclear deal, so that we can actually divert our civilian nuclear, what do you call, nuclear material into our weapons program. That was one of the major reasons. David Albright is the only one who has actually said that. Nobody else have actually come up with any other a very similar estimate. Nobody else has come up. Most of the time, you see, I mean, in public domain, you see people talking about how India does not have enough fissile material, and therefore do not give India a nuclear
No,
treaty because it will.
they always talk about India not having enough weapons. They always put the number of weapons at about 100 to
No,
120.
no, that,
That's
that
it.
no, that is no,
But
that is
in terms
different.
of
No, that
fissile
is different.
materials, in terms of fissile material,
Uh,
we do have a lot of fissile material, and also the whole nuclear deal and the uranium or the indigenous uranium we're talking about is more geared towards fueling our nuclear submarines. You have to keep that in mind that we require a lot of uranium to run our
we
submarines.
don't have much of uranium, and most of our bombs are uranium based. We don't have more. We
Plutonium
have
based.
more. Yeah, uranium based. We have most of
No,
our bombs are
from
actually uranium based.
1974, from 1974, the very first test, we are using a plutonium based core.
I might be wrong in that. I might be wrong in that, but from what I know, we are our warheads currently are uranium based. We have one out of the four warheads tested. One was a thermonuclear bomb. The other one was a boosted uranium bomb, and there were two plutonium bombs. From what I understand,
Also
we
we are
have both
using
uranium.
also we are using reactor. We tested a reactor grade, use reactor grade plutonium in one of the tests. So we have a lot of
That was
reactor grade plutonium. So as far as numbers go, it's, I mean, we choose not to weaponize. I mean, if today someone says Pakistan has the fastest growing nuclear weapons
that
arsenal,
doesn't mean
it
much.
doesn't consider. I mean, we choose not to indulge in that because once you make a large number of weapons, we need to secure it. It's a cost involved. So we go back to the whole concept of minimum credible deterrent, and this is what General Sundarji said. But he said more is not required when less is enough. Now, but when talk of transparency, this is where we define what is less, and what is enough. That is where the transparency will come. I mean, we may say anything, that we might just say that we will have 200 nuclear weapons, and that is good enough for us. I mean, the UK has about 200 bombs. The French have 300, and they're okay with that.
No, but that is what Trump says. The Europeans in general are living off the American defense budget.
That will change
You
it, all
know,
right. I mean, he's
uh,
already put them on notice. The
that is,
British
yeah,
had actually nearly abandoned the aircraft carriers, and now, but then
yeah.
then they went back into it. So they realized that they have just sanctioned the next generation of ballistic missile submarines, the
Mm.
successor to the Vanguard class. So no, I mean, you've just seen the Japanese up their defense budget. So overall,
No,
worldwide, we're
I
going to
mean,
see the defense budgets
think
go
the
up.
whole, no. I would expect the nuclear arms race, especially in the Indian subcontinent, to actually really heat up in the coming years, especially between the Chinese and the Indians and us.
if if
That
if if there is transparency, I don't think there will be a nuclear arms race. If we just say that we have a triad,
the,
we have
see,
deterrent
but the
patrols
issue,
via nuclear submarines. It's not going
it
to
is
work.
a it is see, it is, again, we come back to a very vague subject, which is the minimum credible deterrence. The minimum credible deterrence changes according to how the Chinese behaves, right? And the Chinese technological advancements and the
So
Chinese
exactly
nuclear.
why I say that we need to be
So
transparent about it, and
no,
exactly
no, no, no.
why we need to keep revising
Let me finish my
our
point.
nuclear
Let
doctrine.
me no, let me finish my point. So here you have a situation vis-a-vis the Chinese and the Americans, where the Chinese are playing catch up to the Americans, and therefore they will go ahead with it, which would in turn give them more capability in their hands vis-a-vis us, and therefore we will have to follow suit. It is going to be a vicious cycle. I don't know how it's going to end, but it is, sorry. So I expect the Chinese to up the ante a little bit from their what do you call posture towards India, defense-wise. But at the same time, I'm expecting the Chinese to give us a little strategic space, or rather, they will also make sure that they don't want any untoward incidents. I mean, I think you can very clearly see that whenever there is a border issue between the Indian Army and the PLAN, the PLA rather, where have you seen the videos where they don't use the guns and they just
They don't.
push each other? So there is, we have to look at it from the Chinese perspective. They're also aware that they also don't want to provoke India. So they're also showing a lot of strategic restraint there, on purpose. They don't want an untoward incident to take
No,
place.
you don't, you really don't want to. So that's why a lot of these posturing, right? When they deny us entry into the NSG, or say veto what hurts us, which is terror from Pakistan. So they will keep using these proxies and little things at us. Or the other thing that they're doing is trying to surround us with naval bases. They have already acquired border. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
know there'll be a naval base over there. The Pakistanis have
I
invited.
mean, Guardia,
There is a
Guardia is
port
going to be a
in
naval base. You can't
Hambantota
do anything.
in Sri Lanka. They are developing a port in Myanmar. The entire CPEC, this whole OBOR,
This is,
has a strategic and a context to it. It's not just an economic or a trade.
but there are going to be changes with regards to the Hamnambota port. From what we understand, the Sri Lankans are running a budget deficit mainly because of that port. The Chinese
Yes,
are not investing. The Chinese are not investing in the same way that we do, or even the Americans do.
the
It's
Chinese don't.
pure
The
business.
the Chinese have been
Pure
doing it
business.
all over the world. I mean, that's what they did in Africa.
Even in Africa, is a good case point for that.
Yeah, and,
So
and in Sri Lanka,
let's.
the Sri Lankans have decided to sell the Hambantota port as well as the airport to the Chinese because they can't pay the debt. So this is how
They can't pay their debt.
the Chinese acquire stuff.
But at
Similarly
the
with
same,
the CPEC,
Mhm.
there is hardly any Chinese investment. It's more about loans
but
and
but at the same
high
time,
equity
but at the,
returns on investment.
yeah, but at the same time, uh, even if the Sri Lankans sell it to the Chinese, what do you call, putting up their ships in those ports would come only with Sri Lankan permission, not without that.
Obviously,
So here I'm expecting the Sri Lankans, especially with the change in the center, the way India is run. Nobody likes to do a panga with India right now, from what I understand. There
no,
has
but
been,
they like to niggle. They irritate us, but
definitely.
that's fine. We have to play uh, the diplomatic game. The Sri
Absolutely.
Lankans have
So
said
there
that they
is,
will not allow their territory to be used in any way which is
I mean,
against
I'm
Indian
sure
security interest.
I'm sure the Sri Lankans would not want to be a nuclear target, because the
Not only
moment you
not
have
not
Chinese,
not only the nuclear target. Obviously, I mean, we can without using any nuclear weapons, we can bomb
no,
them to
I
Stone Age.
was
I mean,
I was being hyperbolic there. I was being
no,
hyperbolic
no,
there.
no.
But the Sri
But
Lankans, I'm
the
sure,
targets,
would not want to be would not want to be an Indian target for sure.
of course not. So they will play the cards. It's just the kind of thing where small states play two big states against each other and get benefit out of it. Except that the Sri Lankans have now been made a Mickey out of by the Chinese, where they're going to lose some territory to the Chinese. The
Absolutely,
Chinese are
absolutely,
also investing in
and they
this
don't get any
in this
benefit.
Colombo port project, which is again a 1.5 billion or $2 billion project. So uh, same thing will go with the CPEC, where the interest rates will be the kind of interest that the Pakistanis will have to pay is going to be way beyond their capabilities.
There is. I mean, I was surprised that the Pakistanis are actually talking about whether the Chinese CPEC is a new East India company. There is a conversation in the Chinese media right now. I'm sorry, in the Pakistani media, whether in a
They,
very,
the
I mean, it's surprising. Usually you don't see this. You don't expect this from
their
the
own senators,
Pakistanis.
some of their own senators have come out against it. They have questioned the project, the viability of the project. Have rather read uh, some articles in the Pakistani newspapers which have stated the math of it all, and it just doesn't work out. And obviously, if the Chinese want to transport oil through CPEC, I mean, that itself is a no-brainer. That it's just not viable to send oil using that
No,
route.
absolutely not. No, I mean, you don't, I mean, you could just put in a pipeline. I mean, why do you need a road? You know?
No, it
Anyhow,
makes sense to
uh,
transport it via oil tankers, but then the whole Malacca dilemma that the Chinese have uh, uh, is what is used to justify the CPEC project. But yes, the math just doesn't work out even for the Chinese to transport
it
oil
doesn't.
via CPEC.
No, I mean, most of the oil, for example, comes into Germany from Russia in pipelines. Most of the oil gets transported in pipeline. If the
So
Chinese
the
want
Chinese
to,
also, yeah, the Chinese are doing it via the Central Asian countries where they have
they're also
huge
doing.
investment in Kazakhstan and
Yeah, I mean, so there is definitely another reason for CPEC, like you say. So we'll have to wait and see, and we will definitely see a change in Chinese attitude, whether it goes more softer or whether it goes more reactionary. It is to be seen. But I'm sure the Agni Fire has completely changed the way they would look at us from now onwards. So, Yusuf, thank you so much for coming today.
hey, thanks,
I'm going to
Adarsh.
just stop the broadcast.
All right.